This video shows how I went about making this large concrete pot as a feature garden ornament. Firstly, I had to make a fairly heavy-duty turntable which could take the weight of the components. I did this by mounting 2 circles of plywood to an old wheel bearing from a car. Given it was going to get damp, I gave it a quick coat of paint too. Then I drew out a full-scale section of the pot on another large sheet of plywood that I could use to measure and cut the profiles I was going to need. The pot's made in 4 sections that fit on top of each other, just held together by gravity. I cast the bottom sections upside down and used wet sand on the turntable to create the inside form. The initial bucket that I had in mind to form the centre of the form was clearly too small, so I replaced it with a larger one. I still had to use a massive weight of sand though to create the profile I needed. I have a vertical block of wood attached at the bottom to the table and I can mount my profiles on that. After patting down and shaping a massive amount of sand, I had my first inside profile. I needed to add one little block at the bottom to create the lip for the next section to slip over. I use off-white cement for most of my projects as it looks more like limestone when it's dry. My mix is 2 parts sand and 1 part cement with a little bondcrete added as well. All the sections have some wire reinforcement to strengthen the concrete. Getting the little beads on the rim just right is tricky and takes a bit of trial and error to get them looking good. Sloppy cement helps a bit here. It took me until after dark to get these first ones right. The next day the cement is still soft enough to carve and I chipped out little indents on the beads. Then I removed the sand and sacrificed the inner bucket to get it out. It only cost me $4 at Bunnings. Then lots of sand to remove and I was ready for the next section. I reassembled the cut bucket to make the inner core of the sand mould, trying to keep the weight down as much as possible. And with the new profiles cut, it was time for more sand. This time the inner core had 10 buckets of wet sand before I even added the weight of the cement. I was seriously worried the whole thing was going to collapse. A coat of sloppy cement to start with helps preserve the details of the inset at the bottom. Then more cement and reinforcement and of course weight. Now I was seriously coping with a massive load on the turntable and cracks were appearing in the sand due to the enormous load. Looking underneath though, things didn't look too bad, but I took some sand out just to ease the load a bit. I weighed the sand when I took it out. There was around 100 kilograms of sand and probably the same weight of cement, but it all held up okay. Just. Next morning I carved the indents on the beads and free-handed the decoration on the frieze panel. Then more sand out and on to section 3. This section had a cylindrical portion, so I bent some 3mm ply to make the core and more sand for the base. You can see I used a slightly different profile for the inside mould and the outer wall. Then more Rio and bead making and bead carving. Next came the handles. I cut a template from my original full-scale drawing and used it to mark out the handle profile and the positions of the handles on the body. The cement's still soft enough at this stage to chip out holes for the handle reinforcement. The handles start with some 2mm mesh covered with chicken wire. These are shaped and fixed to the body of the pot using the profile as a guide. The handles need 2 coats to get their final shape. The first coat's let dry overnight and the second one added the next day. I find some reshaped kitchen cutlery handy for this job. The spray gun with water is a great way for keeping the moisture content just right. Then more sand removal and I can trim off the overhanging reinforcement from the inside. Eventually I'll patch these holes with a little more cement. The fourth piece is essentially vertical, so I used a piece of tin to create a cylinder for the inner mould. I just used sand to create the inner lip. Then more cement, more Rio, and more painstaking mucking around to get the beads right again. A little bit of decoration and a clean up and the job is just about done. I made some little rosettes out of casts which I stuck on with Gorilla Glue. And the pot is complete. Each section is insanely heavy and needs 2 people to carry, so it's not going anywhere in a hurry. Here it is in the garden.